Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS Study Circle. Join the official Telegram channel of Rao's IAS Study Circle to stay updated and get all the materials on the Telegram. The link to the channel can be found in the description box. Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading from a UPSC Civil Services examination perspective. So today let's take up the important news which has appeared in the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 1st of August 2021. The news to be discussed has been displayed on your screen and timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So on this note, let's start our today's discussion. Now the first news to be taken up appears on page number 9. It says that United Nations warns that hunger is expected to rise in 23 global hotspots. And these 23 global hotspots has been declared as per a report published by World Food Programme and Food and Agriculture Organization of United Nations. So as you can see in this map, these are the 23 global hotspots where there are acute food insecurity. And these acute food insecurity are mainly because of conflict or insecurity, disease outbreak, displacement of people, dry conditions with respect to growth of crops, economic shocks, flood, locust, even political instability or unrest, which is causing increasing food insecurity, and also tropical cyclone. So these are the reasons provided in this report with respect to increasing food insecurity, especially in these 23 global hotspots. Now, increasing food insecurity is primarily leading to starvation and even cases of malnutrition, especially among children and women. And because of increasing food insecurity and increasing starvation and malnutrition, there are increased risk with respect to life and also livelihood. So considering this concept of global hotspot where food insecurity is increasing, there is a need for targeted humanitarian action, and these actions have been highlighted in this particular report. Now with respect to humanitarian action, this report has categorized these areas into different phases. The worst among being the 5th phase, which talks about catastrophe or famine. And here the priority response objective includes urgent action to revert or prevent widespread death and total collapse of livelihoods. So the 5th phase highlighted in this report, and it says that there is an urgent need to take certain steps to prevent widespread death and total collapse of livelihood. Now in this regard, the report says that in such phase 5 area, households have extreme lack of food or other basic needs even after full employment of coping strategies. Further, in such areas, that is in phase 5 areas, starvation, death, destitution and extremely critical acute malnutrition levels are evident. So based on these different phases, this report has highlighted certain actions or emergency actions to be taken. Now regarding phase 4 area, it says that there is an urgent action needed to save lives and livelihoods. And the household in these phases have large food consumption gaps which are reflected in very high acute malnutrition and excess mortality. So two aspects are quite evident while going through this particular report. One is an increasing chance of loss of life, and the second is an increasing chance of acute malnutrition. So the steps needed is primarily to prevent loss of life and also to see that acute malnutrition can be treated. So the question is how these things can be done. Now regarding the Asia Pacific region, this report highlights certain actions which needs to be taken, and these 4 actions are anticipatory actions, whereas with respect to emergency response action, the report says that there is a need for humanitarian response plans in order to ensure food security and livelihood and also to prevent acute malnutrition. So the steps needed to be taken as per the report includes supporting wheat crop growth in the Asia Pacific region, plant protection measures along with livestock protection measures, increase unconditional cash transfers so that the income received will help in meeting the food requirements along with nutritional requirements. And also the report mentions about rehabilitating water harvesting and irrigation infrastructure for proper growth of crops. So these are some of the actions recommended as per this report. Now as per the report, India is not one of the 23 countries where food insecurity is increasing. So here you need to know the steps taken by the government of India in order to ensure food security. And the step includes Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana, specially which was taken post-pandemic. Now, as per the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana, here government allocates free of cost food grain 5 kg per person per month to beneficiaries who are covered under the National Food Security Act. And this amount of food grain is given to the beneficiaries over the food grains which are allocated to beneficiaries under National Food Security Act. So the government of India provided for additional food security over the food security as provided under National Food Security Act. And as per the recent report of the government, the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana was further extended for May and June of 2021. Now this topic of Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana and also food covered under National Food Security Act has already been covered in the previous DNS. So here let us revise the food security provided under National Food Security Act. Now with respect to distribution of food grains, the National Food Security Act has divided households as per eligible households. And according to eligible households, houses are covered under priority household or Antyodaya Anna Yojana households. So the priority households shall receive 5 kgs of food grains per person per month at subsidized prices from state government under targeted public distribution system. Whereas with respect to Antyodaya Anna Yojana, a household shall be entitled to receive 35 kgs of food grains per household per month at subsidized prices. And in this regard, it is the state government which shall prepare the guidelines to prepare list of priority household as well as households covered under Antyodaya Anna Yojana as per the National Food Security Act of 2013. And this shall be done for both urban as well as rural areas. So these aspects becomes important to understand the basics of food security in India, which is covered through the targeted public distribution system carried on by the respective state governments. Now another important aspect is that the coverage of the population under targeted public distribution system shall be decided by the central government, and this shall be done on the basis of population estimates as per the latest census. So all these aspects becomes important with respect to the National Food Security Act of 2013, as questions can be framed in your upcoming prelims examination. Now questions based on this particular report published by Food and Agricultural Organization and also World Food Programme can be asked from the perspective of current events of international importance. And regarding National Food Security Act and also Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana, questions can be asked either in your prelims or in your mains examination under GS paper 2, especially regarding welfare schemes for the vulnerable sections of the population by center and states. So with this discussion, let's take up our next news for analysis. The next news to be taken up appears on page number 10. It says, Stellar Midlife Crisis. What ails the middle-aged sun? Around midlife, star's magnetic field generation mechanism becomes subcritical or less efficient. Now this news primarily highlights that with age or with growing years, the rotation speed of the sun reduces, and along with it, the magnetic field generated on the sun also reduces. So overall, the news says that there is a relationship between rotation rate and the rotation rate of a star slows down with age. Now considering these aspects, this news highlights about a research done at IAS at Kolkata. Now this research revealed low activity period for the sun even during middle-aged period and also low sunspots. Now considering the age of the sun, so far the sun can be considered to be 4.6 billion years old. And at this period, the sun is considered to be at its mid-age. So basically the research done at IAS reveals that the declining rate of rotation and magnetic field is not constant, especially with respect to sun. Now here activity pertaining to sunspots becomes important. So what are these sunspots? These are the cooler areas on the surface of the sun. Now the question arises is that why these areas are cooler? So these areas are cooler because these sunspots are formed at places where magnetic field are very strong, and this strong magnetic field prevents the heat from reaching to the surface of the sun. So basically, this very strong magnetic field does not allow the heat to escape, and that's why these areas or sunspots are cooler as compared to the other areas on the surface of the sun. So sunspots are cooler because of very strong magnetic field. Now here you must understand that strong magnetic field on the surface of the sun leads to strong solar wind, and the strong magnetic field is caused by sun's plasma, which pushes the electrically charged particle towards the poles of the sun, that is towards the north pole and the south pole, and in the entire process the sun becomes a very giant magnet. Now regarding the constituents of sun, it primarily comprises of 91% hydrogen. So the hydrogen fuels the sun, 8.9% helium, which is formed because of thermonuclear fusion of hydrogen atoms, and 0.1% heavier elements, namely carbon, nitrogen, or now this thermonuclear fusion of two hydrogen atoms releases vast amount of energy in the form of radiation, electricity, and solar wind. Now another important aspect to be understood is regarding the solar flares. Now it says that sudden explosion of energy caused by tangling, crossing, or reorganizing of magnetic fields near sunspots causes these solar flares. So after understanding these aspects, let's again go through the research which has been done at IAS. It mentions that at middle age of the sun, it experiences low activity period, and it also experiences low sunspots. So low sunspots can also mean lesser magnetic field, leading to lesser solar activity. So according to the theory proposed by the researchers, it says at about the age of the sun, the magnetic field generation mechanism of stars become subcritical or less efficient, and this allows stars to exist in two distinct active states. One is a low activity mode and the second is an active mode. So the sun can shift gears from low active mode to active mode, and this is in contrast with the theory that is with age of the sun, the rotation speed and magnetic field decreases, as the theory believes that the sun can be in low active mode for some time and even in active mode for certain period of time. And this is because the magnetic field generation of the sun becomes less efficient. So based on this understanding, this news also highlights certain puzzles related to the sun. It says that there is a breakdown of gyrochronology relationship. Now gyrochronology is used to determine the age of the sun with the help of its rotation. So it says that there is a breakdown of the gyrochronology relationship because after midlife of the sun, a star's rate of spin does not slow down with age as fast as it was slowing down earlier. So there is a contradiction with respect to this relationship where rotation rate and age of the star slows down with age. It then says that the sun's activity level has been observed to be much lower than other stars of similar age. Now this can be done by comparing the rotation rate of similar stars. And lastly, it also mentions about certain periods in the life of the sun when few sunspots were observed for several years at a stretch. So these can be said to be some of the puzzles relating to the slowing down of rotation rate and magnetic field of the sun. So in this discussion, you must know the relation between sunspots and magnetic field and also about solar flares, as these are sudden explosion of energy caused by reorganization of magnetic fields near the sunspots. And you must also know the components of the sun, as it is mostly formed of hydrogen, which comprises 91%, followed by helium, which is 8.9%, and 0.1% for heavier elements. And also about formation of helium through thermonuclear fusion of hydrogen atoms. Now in this article we discussed about sunspots, magnetic fields and solar flares. Now all these aspects becomes important from the perspective of general science in your prelims examination, and in your mains questions can be asked under GS paper 3 pertaining to science and technology and their developments and impacts on everyday life. So this article becomes important both from your prelims and mains perspective pertaining to science and technology. With this discussion, let's take up our next article. Now the next news to be taken up appears on page number 7. It says Sri Lanka seeks to reset relations with India, and in this regard, Colombo to send High Commissioner to New Delhi to pitch for investment, trade, and connectivity along with religious exchanges. So, Sri Lanka is preparing to send its High Commissioner designate to New Delhi along with a roadmap, and this roadmap intends to restore ties that includes resolving the fishermen issues, building connectivity with India, improve trade and investment with India, and to promote religious links, including by handing over sacred Sita temple stone for the Ram temple to be built in Ayodhya. Now, the primary aim of this roadmap developed by Sri Lanka is to bridge the trust deficit between India and Sri Lanka. Now, one of the main reasons for increasing of this trust deficit is the growing clout of China in Sri Lanka. Now, as you all know, that earlier Sri Lanka had cancelled the East Terminal Container Project, which was a tripartite agreement between India, Japan, and also Sri Lanka. So, according to the government of India, Sri Lankan government took this decision unilaterally, on which even the Japanese government was not very happy. Now, on cancelling the project with respect to East Terminal Container Project at Colombo Port, the President of Sri Lanka stated that he was cancelling because of growing protest of trade unions against privatization. Now, it is also believed that the Chinese government was fueling this particular protest by the trade unions, so that the Sri Lankan government cancelled the East Terminal Container Project, which was given to India and Japan. Now, in this project, India and Japan had combined 49% stake. Now, on this unilateral decision of Sri Lanka, Indian government expressed its displeasure, and on this, Sri Lankan government then offered India and Japan to develop West Container Terminal at the Colombo port. So, the Chinese factor can be said to be one of the prime reason for increase in trust deficit between India and Sri Lanka. Another reason of declining ties between the two countries includes approval given by the Sri Lankan government to Chinese funded Colombo port city along with autonomy to Chinese government, leasing of Hambantota port to the Chinese government for 99 years, and also endorsement of Belt and Road Initiative of China, which is opposed by India. So, on all these factors, the resentment between India and Sri Lanka have grown over the period of years. And because of the growing resentment, Sri Lanka plans to send its High Commissioner designate to India with a particular roadmap to resolve fishermen related issues, to build connectivity with India, to improve trade and investment, and also to promote religious links. Now, Sri Lanka is very crucial to India with respect to various aspects such as trade and investment, connectivity, religious and medical tourism, and also regarding geopolitical and geostrategic reasons. Now, regarding trade and investment, Sri Lanka is one of India's largest trading partners in SAARC, and India in turn is Sri Lanka's largest trade partner globally. Further, Sri Lanka also provides investment opportunities for Indian infrastructure companies. And here example can be given with respect to West Terminal Port of Colombo. Now, regarding connectivity, the ports of Sri Lanka like Colombo Port, Hambantota Port handles huge cargo that comes to India, since India did not fully develop a transshipment port in the southern coast. Further, regarding tourism, there is a huge scope for religious tourism with respect to Buddhist tourism and also medical tourism, as Sri Lankan patients frequently visit Chennai for their medical treatment. Further, Sri Lanka is also important for India for geopolitical and geostrategic reasons, as both India and Sri Lanka share common membership with respect to SAARC, BIMSTEC, and Indian Ocean Rim Association. Further, Sri Lanka is also important for India with respect to its ambition to become the net security provider in the Indian Ocean region. And also, pursuing strong ties with Sri Lanka is an integral part of India's neighborhood first policy. So, because of all these reasons, we can say that Sri Lanka is very much significant for India. However, there are certain challenges which still remains to be resolved with respect to growing India-Sri Lanka ties. Now, with respect to the challenges, apart from the China factor which we have already seen, there are other issues as well which remains. These are ethnic issues pertaining to the 13th Amendment, which led to insufficient devolution of powers to the northern Tamil provinces in Sri Lanka. So this has strained the relations between the two countries. Now, regarding resolution demanding war crime investigation against the Sri Lankan government, and also resolution to investigate human rights abuses in Sri Lanka were abstained by India. So effectively, India voted against Sri Lanka at the UNHRC resolution. Further, the issue of Indian fishermen entering Sri Lankan waters. And lastly, the growing of trust deficit as the Sri Lankan government scrapped the East Container Terminal project. And even India rejected the offer of Sri Lanka with respect to currency swap of $1 billion. And also India refused debt repayment waiver for 3 years as what was asked by Sri Lankan government. So these can be said to be some of the challenges with respect to India and Sri Lankan ties which still remains. And lastly is the China factor which we have just seen. So based on these challenges, Sri Lankan government has come up with a roadmap which talks about speeding of infrastructure projects, setting up an interagency committee to enhance trade, investment and also tourism, and also to promote cultural exchange between India and Sri Lanka. It talks about exchanges of Buddhist and Hindu scholars as well as Sri Lankan Catholic pilgrims to the Velankini Trail in Tamil Nadu, and also handing over a sacred stone from the Sita Amman temple in Sri Lanka for Ram temple in Ayodhya. So with respect to this news, let's wait for the final outcome of this meeting, especially regarding the roadmap to improve ties between India and Sri Lanka. Now this topic becomes important from the perspective of India and its neighborhood relation under GS paper 2, and in the prelims question can be asked with respect to current events of international importance. Now as you can see, a question was asked way back in the year 2013 on India-Sri Lanka relationship. So you can expect a question in your upcoming mains examination with respect to the recent developments on India and Sri Lanka. So this particular question asked in 2013 says that in respect of India-Sri Lanka relations, discuss how domestic factors influence foreign policy. Now this question is still valid even today. So let's wait for the final outcome with respect to the roadmap as proposed by Sri Lankan government, and also with respect to improving ties between India and Sri Lanka. With this, let's take up our next article. Now the next discussion appears on page number 3 in the magazine section. It says that athlete Ila Mitra missed the 1940 Olympics but became an indomitable peasant leader. And she was also arrested in the Tebhaga movement or in the Tebhaga Uprising. Now as you can see, a question was asked by UPSC in the year 2013 with respect to Tebhaga peasant uprising. It says that demand for Tebhaga peasant movement in Bengal was for. Options were A. The reduction of the share of landlords from 1/2 of the crops to 1/3. B. The grant of ownership of land to peasants as they were the actual cultivators of the land. C. Uprooting of the zamindari system and the end of serfdom. And D. Writing off all peasant debts. So we understand that from our history perspective, we need to know about the Tebhaga movement. And in this regard, you must remember the contribution of Ila Mitra towards the Tebhaga movement. Now, Ila Mitra was associated with the Communist Party of India. Now, the term Tebhaga means teen bhag or 1/3. So this was basically a fight between sharecroppers and jotedars. Now, sharecroppers were also known as bhagidars. Now, the jotedars collected huge tracts of land and gave to the sharecroppers to cultivate. And after the cultivation of the produce, half of the cultivation was given to the jotedars. Now this uprising took place in Bengal, and the sharecroppers of Bengal decided that they do not want to share half of the produce but only 1/3 of the produce, hence the name Tebhaga Uprising. Now these jotedars not only collected huge tracts of land but also controlled the local market and also participated in money lending activities, especially to the bhagidars or especially to the sharecroppers. So basically the sharecroppers of Bengal did not want to pay half of the produce to the jotedars but only 1/3 of the produce to the jotedars, and hence the uprising. So this system of half payment was challenged by the bhagidars, that is sharecroppers, and they asserted to pay only 1/3 of the produce. Further, they also asked to store food grains in their godowns. Now this movement was led by All India Kisan Sabha, which was the peasant wing of CPI. So because of this movement in 1947, Bengal Bargadars Temporary Regulation Bill incorporated the demand of the sharecroppers. However, the bill was passed much later in 1950, and on the behest of the jotedars, the police tried to suppress the Tebhaga uprising. So based on our discussion, here A becomes the correct answer. That is the reduction of the share of landlords from one half of the crop to one third, as the name suggests. So from the perspective of history and culture and also GS paper 1 pertaining to history and culture, you need to know about Tebhaga movement, and from the perspective of personality, you need to know that Ila Mitra was associated with Tebhaga movement in northern Bengal. And the Tebhaga movement took place around Indian independence from 1946 to 1947. So with this discussion, let's take up our question for the day. Now based on our discussion, this becomes your practice question for the day. So the question is, consider the following statements. First, sunspots are areas which has comparatively high temperatures as compared to other parts of the sun due to weak magnetic fields. Second, solar flares results due to reorganizing of magnetic fields near the sunspots. So the question is, which of the statements given above is are correct? Options are A, 1 only, B, 2 only, C, both 1 and 2, and D, neither 1 nor 2. Now coming to the answer of yesterday, the question was, which among the following sector has been given the highest weightage in the index of 8 core industries? Options were coal, refinery products, electricity and fertilizers. And this the correct answer is B, that is refinery products. So with this we come to an end to today's discussion. Thank you for watching DNS.